Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, is arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over allegations he shared confidential information with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump gathers his board of peace members to meet for the first time to discuss the reconstruction of Gaza. The White House sends a warning to Iran as Trump weighs up fresh military strikes. Now, Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Police carried out searches at the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, as well as an address in Berkshire. The former prince is accused of sharing confidential material with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. King Charles said it was with the deepest concern he had learned about the arrest of his younger brother, adding that the law must take its course. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined in the studio by correspondent and columnist Gemma White and broadcaster Jono Hayes. Jono and Gemma, what a busy day to be in today. We've got a fully packed show, but obviously we're going to start with the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor story, which has been growing and escalating throughout the whole day. What are the series of events, Gemma, that led us to Andrew's arrest this morning?
On his birthday.
On his birthday, 66th birthday.
His 66th birthday. So first of all, I found it very interesting. No one was given a heads up about this. The royal family was not given a heads up.
Actually, I must say something. Sky News understands that the Home Office was giving a heads up about Andrew's arrest from Thames Valley Police, but that information just came into me, so it was apparently the Home Office.
They got the heads up, but the royals did not.
Apparently that's according to Sky News. Okay. We don't know one source, but apparently so.
That's interesting. It does surprise me then that the Home Office didn't then tip off Buckingham Palace. So yeah, that adds another layer of intrigue, definitely. What I think is interesting here is that we've basically got two timelines kind of leading to Andrew's arrest, because, as you say, he has been arrested for misconduct, and this does pertain to allegedly passing on information to Epstein that he would have been privy to as trade envoy. But you can't look at this without also looking at the allegations from Virginia Giuffre. So there's kind of two timelines coming together here. Now, it basically started, he was trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. The role was taken away from him. He earned the nickname Air Miles Andy because people thought he was taking lots of free trips. He went on holiday with a Libyan gun smuggler. There was a lot of shady kind of things going on there. With regards to Virginia Giuffre, it was in 2014 when her allegations first came to light about this alleged 2001 encounter. Now, in 2019, she gave an interview to BBC, and then obviously later on that year, in November, he gave his, very famous interview now. So by 2020-21, the legal pressure is starting to mount. In the US, Giuffre's lawyers wanted Andrew to be held accountable. And you had senators as well, representatives saying, yeah, he needs to answer some questions. So in 2021, she filed a civil suit against him. And in 2022, Queen Elizabeth herself stripped Andrew of his military titles and royal patronages. As we know, Andrew was the favourite child. So that was incredibly, incredibly significant. And I do wonder if at that point, the royal family hoped that would kind of draw the line under it. They felt they'd kind of done enough. But in 2022, in February, he settled out of court. He paid between $16 and $17 million, and that was included no admission of liability. And obviously, we have to remember he has strenuously denied all of these allegations against him. And then the case was closed and there were no criminal charges. And that has brought us to today. That has brought us to this moment. So we have to look at his time as a trade envoy, and we have to look at these allegations against him of sexual misconduct. And they've kind of come together to this point.
And it's so interesting because as the Epstein files have been released, we've had more and more information out when it comes to Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor's links to Jeffrey Epstein. But I was thinking back to the story, and I remember when Virginia Giuffre first made the allegations about Andrew. And I look at the story now, and he has been arrested on misconduct in office, well, possible misconduct in office. And I wonder, Jono, we forget about the survivors at the heart of this, but how may they feel at the moment?
Well, look, I think the difficult thing with this is we obviously know the allegations that are against him with regards to the Epstein list, and we know what the charges that if they had evidence they would take against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The issue here is that the evidence and the witnesses who are pertinent to this case sadly are deceased or are not able to give evidence in something that may or may not be in relation to the allegations that are there against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So that makes it very difficult, which I'm sure is disheartening for the survivors. What I think we're seeing here is the police taking action on something that they know they have hard and fast evidence on. Keeping in mind that, and we'd mentioned this before, and Gemma had said before the show, that they could have called him up and said, hey, come into the police station, let's have a chat with you. They could have summoned him in. They didn't do that. They've arrested him, which would indicate that there may be some hard and fast evidence towards his misconduct in office, and the allegations against him may be founded. Of course, we'll find that out in due course of justice, which is exactly what King Charles has said, which is very unusual as well for King Charles to come out and make a statement about this.
Swift.
When they've been so silent. Now that you've said they were tipped off from the Home Office, potentially maybe somebody's been preparing that statement all day long. But he said the law must take its course, emphasised the importance of allowing the legal process to unfold without any hindrance and interference. And again, he didn't reference him as his brother in that statement. He referenced him under his title, which he is now, because he is no longer a working member of the family. What they also said in the statement is that everything continues as normal. Operationally speaking, royal duties are continuing uninterrupted. So there's this strategy, this institutional distancing, which is what needs to take place. Let's be honest, the royal family needs to distance themselves from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who is no longer a part of the family when it comes to the firm, so to speak, and protect the monarchy's public standing. So I think a statement needed to be made. We've seen William and Kate both make a statement in the last couple of weeks in relation to this, and now we've seen the King make a statement as well, which is heavy territory.
And it's quite interesting because we talk about the King making a statement, how swift that statement was. Andrew was arrested 8 a.m. UK time this morning. The statement came out about 2 hours later, and a lot of people were commenting on, you know, the never complain, never explain rhetoric that the royal family's always stuck to. Seems to be changing under King Charles as the monarch, but it's also, are they listening to the mood music when it comes to Andrew and the Epstein files, Gemma, and what the public perception of this really is?
I wonder if they didn't change, but public expectation of them has changed. You can't live in a world where you are a monarch and you are just separate from everything. And when people want comment from you, you can't just say, oh, no, we would never comment on that. It's simply not plausible anymore. And especially of something of this magnitude, when every day more information is coming out, And they've been very careful, haven't they? And Prince Edward as well, he commented, didn't he, I think, when he was maybe in Australia or something. They've all focused on the victims. They have all been very, very careful to centre the victims at the heart of what they're saying. And again, that's something they've learned to do, because previous generations of royals might not have led with that. But, you know, now we're seeing that. We're seeing big changes.
It still must be upsetting. Like you said, it must be upsetting even with that to say, right, the victims are to the fore according to the statements from the royal family, but the victims are not to the fore in terms of the justice that's been served here. The allegations that we're talking about today, like you said, are public office allegations. We've seen that with Damien Green, the Conservative MP, who was in court for a similar situation in 2008. We've seen this with the Plebgate investigation officers, several officers who were done under the same rules as well. This is two very separate things. This has got nothing to do with the Epstein files per se, but everything to do with his time in office there and what he may or may not have disclosed to Jeffrey Epstein, and the allegations standing right there. But I do think we've seen a lot of people who've been Teflon quite to the end, and we've heard reports that Mandelson likewise will face similar investigation into the allegations against him. And I think this is the only thing that can get him on right now. And that is no justification for the victims. And that's a sad state of affairs.
And we actually heard from Virginia Giuffre's family. They released a statement today, and they actually said the family commented on Andrew saying he was never a prince. So that's the comment from her family. But also what I think is quite fascinating is we have to remember Andrew was arrested this morning. He's not been charged. And it's very difficult to prove misconduct in office. So it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome comes after.
And the fact that he is, at the end of the day, a royal arrest is a big deal as well. This is why it's international news. And we haven't seen this. A royal arrest is exceptionally rare. I think 1647, King Charles I was arrested and then later executed. And that's the last time we've seen a royal arrest. Now, I do think, take away from that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is no longer a working royal. So technically, he's no longer, but he is by birthright still a prince. So
and eighth in line to the throne.
So it's newsworthy to say that as well. So there is no, and I didn't know this, there's no criminal immunity under UK law for former royal status. So he will be subject to the full trials and tribulations of the law, pending the outcome of the investigation, which I think allows them to retain him for 24 hours. He can be detained, and then they can make the decision afterwards whether what they will do. But we'll have to wait and see.
But it's quite interesting because we talk about the fact that he was arrested and they didn't need to do this. And I did hear a lawyer speaking a little bit earlier, and it was quite interesting. He said that he wonders if the arrests were made so that the police could go in and search the homes for evidence, if there is any there, which I thought was quite interesting. So maybe they're looking for hard evidence, laptops, details. No one's to really know yet, but that could be a reason why we did see this very public arrest.
And across 2 properties, so I think that's why we're pulling in so many different police forces. Did you say there were 9 police forces from the UK investigating?
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Actually, there's 9 police forces are investigating a range of issues regarding Epstein. They do not all relate to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Some of them relate to the private jet of Epstein and the flights it made in and out of the UK via Luton and also Stansted Airport. So it's an incredible amount of police, 9 forces, significant.
Yeah, it's huge. But it's a huge investigation, and rightly so. They're given it due diligence and a lot of time right now. But if it's for specifically that crime, the misconduct in public office, he could face a lifetime imprisonment if he's found guilty of these allegations. It could be 2 to 10 years, which is far more realistic. But if he is found guilty of this, he will be in prison.
Extremely hard to prove, but let's see what happens. And we just to say, Andrew's always denied any allegations against him. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Stay right there as we move on to another story now. And representatives from President Trump's Board of Peace have met today to discuss the reconstruction and stabilization of Gaza. Members have pledged $7 billion to help rebuild the war-torn region. Trump says the board has the greatest leaders in the world, and it has the chance to be the most consequential board ever assembled. Take a listen.
I believe it's the most consequential board, certainly in terms of power and in terms of prestige. There's never been anything close because these are the greatest world leaders. This is the most prestigious board ever put together. You know, I've seen some great corporate boards. I've seen some great boards, period. It's peanuts compared to this board.
Well, he's pretty chuffed with the Board of Peace, isn't he? I shouldn't laugh, but I always love the way Donald Trump bigs up what he's up to. He's got the confidence, why not? But what came out of the Board of Peace meeting today?
Well, to be fair, some tangible outcomes here. Pledges of around 10 billion in reconstruction. Now, you might think that is an impressive figure. Unfortunately, it's about 10% of what's required in order to rebuild the infrastructure of Gaza right now. So we're at 10% of what's actually required from this initiative. So we're talking about rebuilding, we're talking about long-term financing, and we're now hearing about this preliminary commitment from more than 24 countries to give a stabilisation personnel, which they estimate will be around 20,000. Indonesia, strangely, given 8,000 of those troops, Indonesia alone. So they're going to explore the financial infrastructure discussions in detail going forward as well. What's unusual about this is that we've heard about the money, we've heard about the force, we don't know how the money's going to be used, and we don't know what the force is going to do. So it's on the surface, it's a very tangible outcome, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty, you have to question what is actually going to be done here. Like, have we got plans in place. What's going to happen with this $10 billion of an infrastructure? Are we rebuilding hospitals, schools, accommodation? Or are we just putting the money in there and seeing what happens? There is no real plan in place with the cash. But the Board of Peace sounds wonderful. It's a really nice title to have there. The concern, of course, and this has come from, again, so some of these I take with a pinch of salt, but US and Western intelligence have said this also, along with the IDF, that Hamas are moving to rebuild inside the country. So I think that stabilization troops need to be on the ground, because then you've got eyes quite literally on the ground as regards to what's happening. We're hearing echoes of tunnels being rebuilt and the infrastructure being rebuilt as well. And I'm talking about the military infrastructure, which has been all but decimated by Hamas right now. Because I think regardless of people saying that Hamas are sitting on the laurels waiting for the next step, it's really naive to think something like that is true. You'd have to be naive to think that.
And I think it's so interesting because that's what we don't talk about. Hamas are obviously still heavily involved in Gaza, and that's well known, I think, in many respects. So it's a really good point to bring up. But Donald Trump actually made some comments today regarding Hamas. He said, looks like Hamas will be getting rid of their weapons, but we have to find out. He said, he sort of caveated it at the end, sounded optimistic. But again, no real plan on how this demilitarization of Hamas is actually going to take place. And he also said Gaza no longer a hotbed of radicalism and terror. And I had Elon Levy on earlier, a former spokesman from Israel, and he said to me he doesn't understand what Donald Trump's trying to say there because doesn't agree with it.
Well, it's not what we're seeing either. You know, he's saying one thing and we're seeing something, you know, completely different. And no matter how many times you repeat it, it's not going to make it. It's not going to make it true. I think what's interesting is the stabilization troops as well. Who do they answer to?
So they've said they've got a Major General Jesper Jeffries. Jesper Jeffries. He's going to be the overall command. He is US representative. So effectively, this is a Donald Trump army.
Yeah.
And then Indonesia has accepted deputy commander position of International Stabilization Force. So there's a deputy commander position which is coming from Indonesia, apparently. But once again, it's all pretty unclear.
It's Trump's private army. They're not answerable to the UN. They're not answerable to NATO. They are simply answerable to him. And I think that's terrifying.
And it will be interesting to see how this all pans out, because like we're saying, there doesn't seem to be any set plans in place. But in the past, there have been concerns, Gemma, raised about the board's fitness to implement the plan in a meaningful way. I don't know if this is still the case when we look at things, because you're saying Hamas is rebuilding. But in my mind, I'm like, where are they getting the material from to do that?
And where are they getting the money from?
It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's as well, like this first meeting was always going to be like a big test. You've got all these names and egos in the room. Like that would have been a huge, you know, test. And you've got countries who actively kind of despise each other as well. You know, what was the seating plan? How did that work out? I would love to have been a fly on the wall. I think ultimately, though, they are failing their first test, which is Gaza, because that was really the what brought them together in the first place, what brought Trump's Board of Peace. He kind of pinned it on Gaza. They're going to rebuild Gaza. They're going to pump all this money in. They're going to, you know, do all these amazing things. They're going to turn it into some futuristic, you know, Riviera. But also, he wants to challenge the United Nations. So you're giving this Board of Peace so many remits already, very, very difficult ones as well. You're going to challenge the UN. Like, that's massive. And also, what I found interesting is he's suddenly got all this money for the Board of Peace. Why isn't he pumping that money into NATO? You know, his anger with NATO was that everyone wasn't contributing enough, but suddenly you've got access to all this money, so why are you choosing to put it here rather than, you know, shoring up proven existing entities? So as I say, Gaza was the first test for this Board of Peace. They're not really achieving much. You know, as you say, Hamas is still really active. You've still got, you know, Israel strikes, which are kind of killing Palestinians on a near daily basis. Hamas has not disarmed. Israel has not withdrawn. No international forces have been deployed in the area. And you were saying before the show, the two-state solution appears to have absolutely disappeared. No one's talking about that anymore.
And I find it fascinating because lots of the US traditional allies, like the UK, Sweden, and a whole lot of other countries, have not joined.
No, they're observers.
They've absorbed this, but they've chosen not to join the border peace. And the issues they rose were the fact that Israel's on the board of peace, but there's no Palestinian representatives. So that questions neutrality when it comes to decisions. Also, them basically trying to fight the UN for a similar place. And once again, this two-state solution, because we see the annexation of the West Bank when it comes to Palestine. And there's so many questions right now. Where's the two-state solution? And
well, that seems to have gone by the wayside. But the things that are still, and the major players are worried about, the questions that are there, legitimacy, governance, how it's going to work alongside the UN, none of these things have been answered. Accountability. There is none. We just don't know enough about that right now. We just know you've been asked to give money towards something, to help fund something, this mystery project that we don't know what it is. We'd like 10 billion to start things off, and we'll see how it goes from there towards the 70 billion cap. So I think that the global key players who've held back and said, we'll observe for now because we're not sure what's going on here, are just saying exactly what everyone else is thinking. What is the Board of Peace exactly going to do? All of these huge players who are involved there, and it is a who's who on the guest list for the Board of Peace, with no actual plan, no outcome that we can foresee, and just saying, we're the Board of Peace, we're here to make things great again, is wonderful, but there's no firm, here's the end goal. And we've said this for a very, very long time. Nobody knew what was going to happen after the fall of Hamas. What would be the governance? Who would be in charge? And we still don't seem to be any closer to that actual answer.
And you know, we have to think about the people of Gaza who have suffered immensely over this time, and they're probably feeling like, when is help going to come?
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your thoughts on that story. Let's move on now. And the White House has warned Iran they'd be very wise to make a deal with US President Donald Trump, weighing up military action. It's believed a US strike could take place as early as this weekend. Addressing reporters, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president was still hoping for a diplomatic resolution with Tehran. Take a listen.
The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world. Diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration. He's talking to many people. Of course, his national security team, first and foremost, and you know who the members of that team are. And this is something, obviously, the president takes seriously. He's always thinking about what's in the best interest of the United States of America, of our military, of the American people, and that's how he makes decisions with respect to military action of any kind.
Jono, a lot of things happening with this story. We've heard reports that a US strike on Iran could be as imminent as Saturday because of the military build-up. Caroline Leavitt saying they're looking for a diplomatic resolution. Donald Trump saying 10 days to make a deal. A lot happening. What's going to happen?
There remains a credible diplomatic pathway, at the moment at least. Is it possible the talks in Switzerland are producing these instrumental progress, and also some proposals as well? Unfortunately, and I do believe that, and I woke up this morning like many people reading stories online thinking, today's the day, this is it. We have got 2 US aircraft ships that are off the coast of Iran, 150 miles away. That's dangerously close territory. We've got 10 missile-capable warships that are there as well, 50 fighter jets. I mean, the arsenal is quite substantial. They're ready. The issue here is that the red lines that the US have drawn are definitely something that Iran are not going to agree to. And I'm talking about things like ceasing the enrichment capability of the uranium, protecting missiles programs as well. Iran will want to ensure that they still have a missiles program. They're not going to give up on all of that, and they're not going to dismantle their nuclear infrastructure. Why would they? They're trying to rebuild it again after they were already knocked out of it in June of last year. And the sanctions that they see on the table that would be put to them would be tantamount to surrender, which Iran is not going to go for.
Actually, Iran did say today that they are not going to stop nuclear enrichment program.
Exactly.
They want to carry on having it for domestic usage. That's always been their argument when it comes
they would
to
now
Iran.
like Russia to take some of this, and they said, okay, we'll give the enriched uranium to Russia for safekeeping, which is crazy. That's like saying we're going to give KFC to the chickens. That is an insane statement to say, and I cannot believe that that is even something that's on the cards. Someone's going to have to give, and Trump does not like giving in.
I don't know if Putin put that on the cards or Donald Trump did, but one of them did. And Gemma, what risks would another confrontation with Iran carry? Because I must remember the last time we saw the confrontation with Iran, they were in the middle of negotiations then. We're in a similar position.
Yeah.
And if history repeats itself, we don't know what could happen.
I think Jono's right. Trump has done this big show of force. Why would he back down from here? So, yeah, what you'd see is military escalation, which we've already seen. We're kind of in the middle of. Iran could respond with airstrikes and drones, but, their capability obviously cannot match those of the US. So I wonder what they would actually be firing back at, because that could escalate massively if they hit like a warship or something like that, though I doubt that they would get that far. You've got then the broader regional aspects here. It could embolden splinter groups, because you've got chaos in the region. It could embolden, further terrorist organisations, greater warfare. Importantly as well, the disruption of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, which 20% of the world's crude oil passes through. That is probably on a lot of minds here with regards to that. And then obviously humanitarian consequences. So many different factors at play.
And it's really interesting. The Strait of Hormuz, as you say, 20% of the world's oil moves through that strait. It's extremely important when it comes to container shipping. And that's actually a real escalation from Iran's point. They are wielding their power by being able to show that they can, of course, close the Strait of Hormuz as they do try to have leverage in these talks at the moment. But, Jono, I often wonder, we talk about Iran right now and what military options the US has, because we talk about air power, and that's quite interesting. I think what I find interesting is how much F-50s and air power Trump's moved, because last time we saw those B-2s, 52s. And they went for the nuclear. And I wonder if he's moving all this air firepower because he's thinking of something similar, or maybe...
It may not be something similar, but I don't think the US Army is at the place where it needs to put boots on the ground when it comes to Iran. And I think the safest and probably the most sensible thing to do is to do an air escalation of any tensions you require there. That's why we're seeing these long-range bombers that are in there as well, which have got huge capability. The armed drones are all on standby as well. And we know there's extensive surveillance aircraft that have been operating in the region. Now, they've been looking intently at the nuclear facilities that are already in place in Iran. We're hearing reports that they've been reinforced, and even the ones that have been hit last year have been reinforced with concrete. They've rebuilt some of those nuclear enrichment plants as well, and we've seen everything that we can possibly see from surveillance footage from above. So this is a war that and I really hope that this de-escalates, and I hope that there is some level of diplomacy that's on the table here and that this can have a conversation. But if it does escalate, this war will be fought from above. And that's where the US is at. And they can do it. They have the might.
And I do think, actually, if I was to be a betting person, I would say it will be fought from above. It's eyes in the sky right now when it comes to the US and Iran. I actually just wanted to bring everyone some breaking news. Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, has been pictured leaving the police station. Andrew has been released from custody. So that's the latest news that we're getting from the news websites over in the UK. And of course, that was our top story today. Now, stay right there as we move on to another story. A South Korean court has sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol to life in prison, finding him guilty of masterminding an insurrection. The court said the action gravely damaged the political neutrality of the military and the police and damaged the country's credibility on the world stage. Frank Smith reports from Seoul.
The bus believed to be carrying South Korea's ex-president arrived at Seoul Central District Court as his supporters demonstrated outside. This banner reading, "Stay strong, Mr. President." There was heightened security also. Today's verdict was the most consequential for the ousted leader. Prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. But the court opted for life imprisonment instead, after finding him guilty of leading an insurrection, noting that while the crime was grave, Yoon had attempted to limit the use of physical force when he declared martial law more than a year ago.
South Korean citizens have been so deeply polarized, pitted against each other. I really think it should have been a death sentence so that this doesn't become an example to repeat. Martial law must never be allowed.
One of the judges presiding over the case said Yoon attempted to send troops to the National Assembly to blockade the Assembly Hall and arrest key figures, including the Assembly Speaker and party leaders, to prevent lawmakers from gathering to deliberate or vote. The verdict makes Yoon the first elected head of state in South Korea's democratic era to receive the maximum custodial sentence. His legal team says the court ignored the principle of basing findings on evidence.
If this ruling ignores the clearly established facts as well as the legal principles and evidentiary standards set forth in our Constitution and the Criminal Procedure Act and simply mirrors the conclusions predetermined by the Special Counsel, then were the dozens of hearings held over the past year merely procedural formalities?
Yoon's lawyers say they will discuss whether or not to appeal the verdict. Former President Yoon can also appeal for a presidential pardon, but the ruling caps one of South Korea's most turbulent political crises, with the scars likely to last for years to come. Frank Smith, Al Arabiya English.
So Jono and Gemma, actually, before we went to that video from Frank Smith, we were talking about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor earlier, and we do know that he's now been released from the police station, and he was in custody for almost 12 hours after his arrest. He has actually been photographed as he left. He's trying to lie in the back of the seat as he tries to avoid cameras. Didn't do such a good job.
No, it's going to be that picture that makes the front page of every newspaper tomorrow morning. I think we're going to see this one for quite some time. It's going to be a good T-shirt. A black Range Rover was seen at Aylsham Police Investigation Centre at about 6:50 local time. It tried to get in through the front gate, it couldn't, and then eventually it made its way in, and about 10 minutes later, 2 vehicles emerged from that same police station, one of which, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, was inside. So we don't know the course of the investigation now. But given, and again, these are the allegations that he was brought in to discuss about his misconduct in public office, given the level of allegations, there may have been some questioning that took place. He may be out on a level of bail right now, or he may have been released without charge, but we won't know the further details of that for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was in Norfolk where the police station was. We were unsure which police station he was being held in, but we have a little bit more information on that. But 12 hours, actually,
I actually think we're going to find out. I think there's going to be leaks. You know, we are being given this sacrificial lamb. You know, he has become a figurehead for the punishment that society and victims are. We are looking for someone to pay the price. Yes. Epstein is dead, he can't pay the price. In the US, they don't seem to be moving towards making any kind of arrest or anything like this. In the UK, we have Mandelson and we have Prince Andrew, and I actually believe that we're going to get quite a lot of leaks and quite a lot of information because he is the person on whom so much is going to be pinned, you know, deservedly or undeservedly. That is going to be his role in this. And
historically speaking, any of these previous misconduct in public office is a 12 to 18 month window from the initial arrest towards trial. So if he has, or if he is to be charged with these crimes, that he, of course, he says he has nothing to do with whatsoever, and he's vehemently denied any of these allegations against him, then that will be something whereby we'll find out very, very soon. But it'll be a long waiting game before this goes to trial, if it goes to trial.
Yeah.
So I'll just repeat that. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor released from the police station, and he spent 12 hours in custody after his arrest earlier this morning, 8 a.m. UK time. So there we are. We know Andrew has now left the police station. Anyway, we're going to move on to our final story, and that's at that time of the show where Gemma and Jono have chosen 2 of their quirkiest stories of the day. Gemma, we're going to start with you, and why hundreds of men are chasing a ball in the streets of Ashbourne and Warwickshire.
Yeah, so this combines 2 of the UK's favourite pastimes, which is kicking a ball around and fighting. So this is called the Atherstone Ball Game, and this is its 826th year. So it's done on Shrove Tuesday, which was Tuesday just gone. Now, what it is, this ball gets thrown at 3:30. It takes place on a place called Long Street, and this ball gets thrown into the crowd and kicked up and down Long Street. Now, there are 2 rules. 1, it cannot leave Long Street, and 2, you can't kind of kill anyone. But apart from that, you know, everything, you can see the punching that's going on here. Now, the aim is at 5 o'clock, when the clock strikes 5, the person holding the ball wins. Now, as I said, this has been going on for over 800 years.
But what do they win?
Bragging rights.
That is ridiculous for bragging rights.
Probably,
I'd want a cash prize.
You probably get a round bought for you down the pub, because that's where most of them spend their time before they come out. Because prior to this, it's a place for children. Children come out and children are given sweets and things like that. But by 3:30, you know, the kids are gone and the grown-ups come in. And you'll note as well there aren't any women there.
I did.
So, yeah, very much a boys' thing here.
And I also noticed the shops were boarded up.
Shops were boarded up.
No women. But is one thing I love about the UK and about England. They know how to preserve a tradition.
Very true.
I mean, it might look a little bit scandalous, but it's been for how many years?
826 years
It's
this
impressive.
has been going on.
We're dumb, aren't we? As like we've come on so far in so many ways, but then you see something like this and you go,
let's go back to medieval times.
Like, do we deserve to be here?
It is medieval.
Wow.
You can picture this in medieval times.
Absolutely.
You could put this in any era. And do you know what? It didn't stop during World War I, and it did not stop during World War II. They have always hosted this event. So, yeah.
I'm impressed. Stick with what you know. Anyway, Jono, we're going to come on to you because apparently age is nothing but a number. Do you think that saying is an excuse to the reality of age?
It depends, I guess, and it is that you're only as young, as old as you feel, I guess. That's probably what it is. However, you might be noticing some of the signs of getting older, and I'm going to list them out for you.
Okay.
Do you prefer to have a quiet drink in the corner of an establishment, or would you prefer to be in the middle of all the action? If you answered A to that, then you're likely to be getting old.
Corner.
Yeah, absolutely, the corner. Do you notice that when you get out of bed, you no longer seem to be able to move with such ease anymore, and you notice that you start to groan when you bend down and making noises when you get back up again? If you tick this box, you may be getting older. Talking about the aches that you didn't know that you had before is also, with your friends, is apparently something that 40% of people who are over the age of 40 do. And opting for a quiet night out as well as waking up at 6 a.m. If you do all of these things, you're likely to be in your twilight years, i.e. past the age of 40 and growing old gracefully. And I never understand, certainly when I was younger, when my parents would get up off a chair and you had and getting back down with another, and I never quite got that. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that noises. You have to make sound effects when you move around in your day-to-day life. And that's just part of being in the over 40s club. So if you're there, congratulations.
I have another box to tick. I have a favourite ring on the hob.
Oh yeah, I think that's very, that's very adulty. Yeah.
Oh my God, I never knew that was a thing. I'm the same.
Having a favourite ring on the hob is totally a thing. Yeah, that's my kind of box tick.
Oh my God, I definitely have my favourite one. It's to
Which
the
one is
back,
right, okay.
on the left.
Mine is back left.
Back left.
Oh
I
my
always
goodness.
have to.
And you're
do
both
that.
Virgo. This is
We're both
amazing.
Virgos.
What are the chances?
Let's go for a quiet drink.
my
at the
gosh,
pub
yes,
after this.
definitely.
Yeah, no.
Away from everyone.
Away from
You'll also notice things like you're preserving yourself, improving your diet, and taking daily
Absolutely.
vitamins, which is something that I think you should be doing anyway.
yeah.
But when you get to your 40s, you start discovering that they are life, and without them, you don't think you can carry on. But the persistent aches, that's something I wish that was not part of it.
True.
I must admit, I don't get persistent aches. I don't know why that is. I always
your
feel
lifestyle.
quite young,
It is
though.
her lifestyle.
lifestyle.
She's very healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I actually feel young all the time. I never.
You look quite young, great doctor.
And great
peptides.
doctor, yes. Great doctor and great things. But I train a lot.
Yes.
And I also really believe that you have to be quite young in your mindset.
Absolutely.
Even though I don't have children, I do always try to, I know I'm not very good, but keep up with what's going on, you know
You're not
what
even
I
on
mean?
TikTok. What are you talking
Staying down
about?
with the kids,
A little
Leigh-Ann.
bit
Yeah,
down
yeah,
with the
okay,
kids.
she's
And
down.
it's difficult to be down with the kids when you've got no kids, but I do try. But it's quite nice, actually, aging, because I think that, we talk about a quiet drink in the pub, but we've got the confidence to do that. Because when you're young, you need to be in a whole crowd all the time, and you need to have that assurance from
Surrounded
other people.
by people.
And
Yeah.
I think as you get older, there's something quite nice about being secure enough to not have to have that reassurance, to be able to just have a quiet drink and quite enjoy your own company and your friends.
It would actually be nice to have that confidence and reassurance in your 20s as
Oh,
well.
I know,
Yes.
I know.
We would rule the
Maybe
world.
not the
I
hatred for
know.
people that are strangers, but like the rest of it, I would have preferred in my
Yeah, yeah.
20s, but I'll take it now.
And what I don't like as I get older is chit-chat, like idle chit-chat. Do you know, it drives me bonkers. Because I walk my dogs, everyone likes to have a chit-chat. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got a life here. I don't care about Margaret the dog. Like, you know what I mean?
Very approachable.
Yeah.
Very approachable
But,
character.
when I was younger, I would have
sweet.
chit-chatted forever.
Yeah. Don't talk. Don't talk. If you see Leigh-Ann on the street,
Don't speak to her.
don't speak.
No,
to
you
her.
can speak to me. But
Not for long.
not for long. Say hi, and I'll say hi back. And I just wanted to update you before we do leave the show. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been released under investigation, the police say. So we know that. So Thames Valley Police is able to provide an update in relation to the investigation into the offence of misconduct in public office. And the man arrested has now been released under investigation. So that is exactly where we stand. Thank you so much to our guest today, correspondent and columnist Gemma White and broadcaster Jono Hayes. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on X. G&T's coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.